Greek default will be bad for Europe, but it would be suicidal for Greece and Greece citizens. At the moment, Greece has two choices: either a slide with airbags, which is the IMF European program, or parachute diving without parachute. That is the default. If Greece and the Greek government were to default on this sovereign debt, first, the European Central Bank would be forced to cut off any refinancing of the Greek debt. So all the Greek financial sector, banks and insurers would collapse. Second, Greece would have no more euros. There would be no more euros to pay Greek workers. There would be a massive capital flight. So Greece would be unable to stay in the euro. And second, of course, because Greece would have defaulted, all the European government would stop lending to Greece. So Greece would be in a free fall. Greece would have damaged seriously the Eurozone, but we would survive. But Greece would be alone in Southeast Europe, completely alone as a pariah state and a pariah country for decades. The message for Europe is very clear. I think the governments in Europe are really ready to help Greece in many, many ways to overcome the current difficulties, provided that Greece follows the current agreed reform program. If Greece doesn't, then it's goodbye.
Now, during the first year under the EU-IMF program, targets have not been met, no growth measures have been introduced, and markets have not been persuaded by the European Union that it is handling the crisis adequately. Now, taking all this into consideration, isn't the Greek people's, and I put this word in quotes, distrust in what is happening justified?
About markets, Greece should forget about returning to capital markets for a decade or more. Greece refinancing of the debt will be done by the European government. Second, on the lack of growth, in the short run, there has to be a recession in Europe. It's bad to say, but Greece consumes so much above what it produced. In 2009, in the last year of the conservative government, the external deficit of Greece was 15% of GDP. So every time a Greek citizen earned 100 euros, 15 of those 100 were borrowed from outside. So that cannot continue. Because Greece has to close its external deficit and to reduce its budget deficit, there must be a drastic reduction in demand in Greece. That happens in another way. Nobody wants to lend to Greece anymore in the world except the IMF and the European Union. So either this fall in demand is done overnight, which would happen under a default, or it is done over several years, which is a proposal of Europe. So it's normal, and there is no other way that there is no growth in Greece at the moment, because we have to reduce massively consumption and to increase taxes. Greece cannot afford to have a Danish welfare state while paying US American taxes. If Greece wants a Danish welfare state, it has to pay Danish taxes, which is much more. And if you want to pay US taxes, you would have a US welfare state. You cannot have huge public consumption without tax, which leads that the one thing that the Greek government and Europe should do is really to fight tax evasion in Greece.
Now, the Financial Times in a recent article has pointed out that because of the way the European Union is handling the crisis in Greece, there is a dithering risk of creating the Argentina on the Aegean. Do you believe there is a possibility of this happening?
If the Greek government people were ready to commit suicide, yes. And frankly, from outside, what the Neo-Democratia party leadership, Mr. Samaras, is telling, is really pushing Greece to bankruptcy and to suicide. His view that Greece should cut massively taxes is nonsense. Nobody except him believes that around the world. Greece has to pay more taxes. Greece is not Argentina because Argentina was all alone. Nobody helped her. The big difference for Greece is that it has friends around. The European Central Bank, despite what is said, is a huge support to Greece. At the moment, through the Greek banking sector, the European Central Bank lends dozens and dozens of billions of euros at 1.5%. It's extremely low. Nobody else would do that. The European Central Bank is really providing the life support to all the Greek banks. The second line of aid is Europe. and third, the IMF. So there is big difference with Argentina that nobody in Europe wants Greece to default, except some bad newspaper, especially in Germany. But no government wants Greece to default, and everybody is ready to help. My message is that if Greece reforms, Europe will help. If Greece doesn't want to reform, if Greece still believes that it can live beyond its means with borrowed money, that would be the total collapses. That does not mean that we may not change the European program. I have other suggestions. I think we should go